I want to thank Alex and Mr. Whiteman for hosting our roundtable today. I also want to, introduce Jonathan, which a lot of you may know. Industry Index and Plugged In are working together now to create these monthly roundtables on different topics in digital media. So it happens that this month is influencer marketing, which we know and we'll learn is really the new way that a lot of agencies and a lot of brands are spending their money on, they're allocating budgets for. And with that, Jonathan will definitely get into the conversation. And Alex, do you want to say a few words about Cushman & Wakefield?
Thanks everybody for coming. I'm Alex Sheams with Cushman & Wakefield, and my role here is we work on real estate for all different types of companies, media and technology, and selfishly, I like hosting these so I really get to learn what these companies do. So when it comes to their office space, I actually have an idea of what they're trying to accomplish. So I'd love to just sit here and listen, meet everybody, and learn more about your businesses and what you guys are trying to accomplish. So enjoy breakfast, coffee, water, whatever anyone needs. We're here. Nice to meet everyone. Thanks.
And John, with that.
So if anyone wants coffee before we begin, because it was off, they were refilling, so yeah, take your chance right now to grab it. First I want to thank Cushman & Wakefield again. We really appreciate them hosting this. It makes it great. As Ellie said, Plugged In BD and Industry Index has begun doing these together since the first of the year. The real spirit of the roundtables is to create an intimate environment in which we can dig into some questions on different topics kind of related to what we generally call MadTech. So Industry Index is a provider of ratings, reviews, and research on the MadTech industry. So we cover about 5,000 technology companies. Marketers come in, provide ratings, reviews, and feedback, and we have a brand new site that we are working on to try to enhance the type of information. We've been having a lot of good feedback from our client base, so that'll be coming this early summer, so be on the lookout for that. As I said, the topic today is influencer marketing. We are assuming that this is not a sales pitch. This is an opportunity for people to actually talk about an industry. We have people here from technology, we have agencies, we have one influencer. Want to get opinions on kind of what's going on, and with that, I really want to thank everyone who's attended and all of our participants in the roundtable. I'm just going to ask people to quickly go in and introduce themselves. This is your one opportunity. If you want to pitch anything, to pitch now, and then we'll get started with the conversation. So, Jonathan, you are up.
I'll keep it short and sweet. Very pleasure to be here. Jonathan Shanti, I'm the Senior Vice President at Piper. We're currently the world's largest influencer search engine and cross-platform analytics tool.
Yuli Ziv, founder and CEO of Style Coalition, and we are influencer marketing platform has been around for almost a decade. We specialize in fashion, beauty, and luxury, mostly, and lifestyle as well, focusing on creative strategy as well as technology measurement for influencer campaigns and activations. Thank you.
Hey everyone, Jason Charles. I work at Republic Records, digital marketing and promotions manager there. Republic is a record label under the Universal Music Group umbrella.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jacques Fasting. I am the CEO of Shade. We're an influencer management agency for Black and Brown influencers. And what we do is, when it comes to casting influencers, we manage a group of 25 influencers, and we help brands, agencies, and anyone looking for influencers find those diverse niche influencers.
Hi everyone, Dante Mears, supervisor influencer marketing at VaynerMedia. I've been, working in kind of the influencer space for just under 5 years, and have built that team from, me being the first to about 15 individuals now.
Good morning, Mikkel Clark. I'm a DC-based influencer, writer, and lover of pizza. Plus, I'm pretty fun brunch parties also, working with Jock and Shade.
Hi, I'm Paul Cantonis. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Husay. We are an influence marketing agency. I say influence because it's so much more than just the influencers themselves. We do everything from the creative strategy to the casting, the production, the media, the distribution, the amplification, the measurement, and do it all through our own tech, but also through our own agency crew.
I'm Sean Lynch. I am the marketing manager for the Fila brand, based in Fila, North America. I handle all influencers and athletes as well as social media for the brand.
Alan Watson, CEO and co-founder of Hollow Media Group. It's a new platform to allow influencers to monetize their followers.
Excellent. So let's just start by getting the definition that we agree on, kind of what is influencer marketing, and I kind of question that relative to advocate marketing and relative to kind of what's an ambassador. So I will rarely call on individuals to answer questions, so this is kind of jump in, and but we'd like to, don't repeat what somebody else had to say, and also we'd like to get the difference of opinions in terms of the agencies versus technology companies versus brands. So how do people define it?
I mean, I come from a talent procurement background, so for me, ambassador means something different than an influencer. Influencer, I believe, is someone that obviously has influence over a specific audience or for a certain reason. An ambassador generally to me means someone that has a more embedded relationship with a brand, or as you're seeing recently, like Cristiano Ronaldo's new deal. Brands are getting smarter about really making influence ambassadors, and that generally means more services, more of a tied affiliation, not simple one-off.
Yeah, I would say that like ambassadorship, if you even think about Gigi and Tommy Hilfiger, I think that type of, taking the intimate relationship between the individual, the influencer, the creator, and the brand can develop a real relationship, and over time build that equity with their follower base, and really start to share that between the influencer and the brand as well. Whereas I think a lot of just day-to-day influencer marketing is to your point is like a lot of one-offs.
Anyone else?
I like to think about ambassadors being the voice and the reason for the consumer that is already at my doorstep, whereas the influencer is somebody that I'm trying to use as a vehicle to kind of broaden that audience as well as the brand's overall presence and message.
And what about advocates?
I think for me, looking at influencers, ambassadors, and advocates, an influencer can also be an ambassador, right? Depends on maybe if it's a long-term relationship that they have with the brand, paid or not paid. But an advocate is someone who 9 times out of 10 is not necessarily paid. It's more so an evangelist, someone who is a super fan of the brand, and that company finds a way to take advantage of that person, whether it's offering them perks or whatever it is to share their experiences and things like that. So that's kind of how I see it, which is the influencer is like most people said, it's more like that one-time one-off kind of thing. The ambassador can be an influencer or just an advocate, but it's paid or not paid, but it's a more long-term engagement. And the advocate is more so taking advantage of your customer base and stretching that relationship to be able to get you more customers.
Is one of these somebody who naturally chooses a brand and then the brand finds them, versus somebody in which the brand goes and says, I want this person? So is an advocate somebody who starts by saying, God, I love Fila, and talking about it in some sense naturally without any economic relationship? Is that a delineation that people use?
I used to use that. When I used to do Procter & Gamble beauty negotiations, and we had to go find people who were, authentically associated to P&G's core of their brands. We always would encourage celebrities and talent. If you love Pantene, post about it, talk about it. If you love this brand, post about it, talk about it. Watch, Live with Andy on Bravo to see, when they're asking how did you do your hair, how did you do this, what brands these celebrities at the time were talking about. And I think that, it's really great to see an advocate for a brand without it being paid in advance. I think that these brands are really comforting, feeling they know it's not someone who just wants to be paid to do something. With that being said, let's be realistic, money talks. People will become an advocate if you offer them the right deal as well. But I think it's always nice to see, for example, we were working on something for Chipotle. We started finding hundreds of thousands of influencers that were writing in their bios, I love Chipotle. Chipotle is my sanctuary. That went on very well with Chipotle because you have an advocate for a brand without them having to be paid or given something to do so. And in most cases, if brands are smart, they'll re-encourage those people to continue to post or talk about Chipotle. Here's $100 credit, go get some more Chipotle. Thank you for being such a loyal advocate of Chipotle. And that could stem into being an influencer or ambassador for a brand. But I think it starts with, I think what brands are looking for right now is, you know, on the lower level especially, the authenticity of people actually having an affinity for that brand or that product.
I think we've reached a point as well where anyone who's on social media and starts getting any type of a following recognizes if they continue to talk about a certain brand, they really are trying to get that brand to pay attention to them and do a deal with them. So I would say at this point, it's nice if the person actually has genuine interest in that brand. It's very rare to find a true, genuine interest in the brand. I think it's, sometimes it could be manufactured, sometimes it's like they just like it and they do talk about it, but it's a nice to have, it's not a must have.
So that kind of goes to this question of authenticity, right? You know, that word is used an awful lot today when you talk about advertising and marketing. Are we, based upon what you just said, are we beginning to see a point in which followers are just basically gonna assume that there's an economic relationship before, you know, any time a brand is mentioned?
Well, isn't that the whole argument of the FTC? Is that consumers aren't smart enough to know and we have to declare it? I think we all in the industry feel like, come on, everyone realizes if someone is doing something with a brand in an Instagram post or in a video, they probably have some kind of relationship with that brand. But according to the FTC, people are not aware enough of that and can easily be duped, and therefore they must declare that relationship. So I think it all really depends on who the influencer is, what they're talking about, what the relationship is with the brand, and how they utilize it in their content. Will then determine whether or not it's a true authentic thing, or is it Andy Cohen posing with a salad dressing in a picture, which was something that we recently saw, and you look at it and say, wow, he really cares about that salad dressing, he's just standing there in the picture.
I think that's why micro-influencers are so important today, because the higher you go, the less authentic people are going to assume that relationship is. The lower you go, it's kind of going back to the main core of marketing. Word of mouth is still the most powerful form of marketing. So with micro-influencers, you also have the ability to utilize them, and you still believe it's authentic, because in most cases, you know, I could be the mom at part of the PTA and I have 10,000 followers in Marlboro, New Jersey, and if Fila decided to gift me with a new pair of shoes, I'm going to tell all my girlfriends about it. You know, that's authentic. I don't think people are going to assume automatically that Fila, you know, gave her, you know, shoes just to get her to start talking about it. There must have been something that happened to create that relationship, which is why, you know, as Paul mentioned, you know, the days of product placements and, you know, Us Weekly and people are kind of dead because, you know, if you look at any of the data regarding publishers, they're declining substantially compared to online publishers like, let's say, Group 9, who's destroying life. And on top of that, you know, if you look at the way that people are transcending to how they're, you know, consuming their content, social is the first place they're looking to understand what's relevant and, you know, what their peers are looking at and following as well. So I think that's why you've seen such a gold rush with micro-influencers for the exact same reason that Paul just mentioned about those big people. You automatically assume now that it's not as authentic as you thought it was. 3 years ago, we saw, you know, Jessica Alba walking out with Huggies, and she goes, oh, I just happened to be at Walmart buying Huggies. And now we paid you to be there, we took the photo, we placed it. That's how it works, you know, but.
I think the reason people have such a negative connotation when it comes to product placement is partially to blame on us marketers, because I think especially at the beginning, a lot of people simply saw it as product placement, and they thought, you know, if I send a product to an influencer and they take a picture, that's kind of like effective marketing. When they don't realize that it's the rules are different. This is not your traditional advertising and people today realize they want more kind of authentic connection, and that's why for us it's less about existing connection of the brand with that particular influencer. It's using our technology, but also kind of our branding expertise to find influencers that really a great fit for that brand's audience, and they resonate with their audience. And they're good, they kind of own brand on many different levels, from their lifestyle perspective, from their content perspective, reach, and so on. And then creating experiences, creating a strategy behind it. Because I think sending a product, this is not gonna create anything effective or long term. It's about creating that strategy that maybe, you know, activates multiple influencers and maybe runs on multiple platforms and has the same brand message, and make sure that each influencer is on brand and talks a certain way that creates kind of like a more cohesive, you know, creative message that consumers can resonate with. And that's what I think a lot of influencer marketing we're seeing today lacks, that kind of like creative strategy behind it. And this is where the negative effect happens, because if you create an experience that influencer is really genuinely excited about, and their content also almost feels like it's authentic, it doesn't feel sponsored at all. It can be hashtag sponsored, but it wouldn't feel this way, and the followers wouldn't mind, because they genuinely believe that that influencer is excited about that experience.
Yeah, and kind of going off that, I will say as the influencer, I have to know when to say no to a campaign. If it's something just totally off brand, I've gotten offers for, you know, things like teeth whitening. I cover hip hop, a little bit of fashion stuff for the, you know, the Black millennial in DC. So I can't just be, I happen to do a picture with me with a teeth whitening paste. Here's my smile. It just seems really strange and kind of off base, and you're definitely getting a check. It seems forced, and it kind of makes you question, like, do you even care about a teeth whitening company per se by yourself? So it makes it seem inauthentic and unimportant. So being able to figure out what things are in your niche, and what things within reason, because somebody say, oh, he might have gotten paid to wear those shoes, but those some cold shoes still. I like those shoes still. You know, my audience can say I like that idea, that label, that company, or whatever else. So being able to find things that still fit within reason with what your brand does, and being able to say, hey, maybe you could find somebody else for this campaign is pretty important for an influencer.
So I was going to go into a set of questions kind of about the growth trajectory of the market, because it seems like, you know, the fact that we're having this conference wouldn't have happened a year ago. It hasn't yet reached the point, or just beginning to reach the point in which we're seeing the consolidation. But the comment, one of my questions is, if you have to be authentic, and micro-influencers work better.
I disagree.
Okay.
I don't think micro-influencers work
Okay.
better.
All right, why?
It's completely inefficient to use micro-influencers. You can use 20 micro-influencers, or you can use one big influencer, and the big influencer campaign will outperform the 20 micro-influencers. We've done 250 campaigns, at least 252 I think we're up to, since 2010, and we have yet to find a micro-influencer campaign that has outperformed a campaign of 2 or 3 bigger influencers. It is a myth, and it
What's
is
a
a total
micro-influencer?
But I think what's performance?
5,000, 10,000, 15,000
But
followers.
don't you think micro-influencers have a more rabid following?
Not at all.
But those followers are more hardcore, and if you are like some rappers we deal with who are musicians who've got 10, 20, 30,000 followers, they're a lot more intent and cult-like, and they'll follow them. So maybe they'll have a 20, 30, 40% engagement, whereas you've got a macro-influencer who may have 2, 3, 4, 5% engagement.
You don't work with those influencers then. Work with the macro influencer that has that level of engagement. They are out there, they do exist, we work with them on a regular basis. The data will show, we have a lot of first party data through an app that a lot of creators are using. We don't have a network of creators. But we found you pick the right people, you will get those numbers.
There has to be a saturation point, right, where a macro influencer who is, you know, everybody loves and everybody wants to get involved with, there's only so much they can do before they do seem fake on every single thing they do. And if they want to have that originality and uniqueness and authenticity, then they have to be aligned with only a few campaigns, which then I guess pushes the price up on there.
Of course, you got to pay for the right people.
There's a marriage of both. If you're not running effective micro-influencer campaigns, you're just not doing correctly. You're not leveraging data and tools that help you do so.
Right.
It's a very tedious task. That's why, you know, companies like mine exist and other companies out there in the space. I believe there's a marriage of two. It's 1-9-90. If you're not advocating 1-9-90, you just don't know what's going on in the space. You know, 1 is the Cristiano Ronaldos of the world. You know, 9 is the Juliana Ransigs, the Damon Johns of the world. 90 are your micro. I define micro today as 100,000 followers and below. Now, to us at Hyper, we say a lot of ants equal an elephant, and they're also a lot more affordable and not as expensive as an elephant. But you still need elephants, right?
Right, but 100,000 is a big number. A lot of platforms are looking at 15,000 as the micro. So I would still declare 100 as the bottom of the good size ones.
But I think if you're going to look at like how effective the campaign is, you need to know like what the goal of the campaign is. Like what is the real business goal? So
awareness, reach, sentiment.
But if that's not at a national, you know, level, if I'm trying to, you know, take a market like Denver that's performing terribly, I'm not really going to work with like massive influencers. That's going to give me a ton of waste. I really want to be focused with my efforts and
Well,
drive
you're talking
impact
about a
in
very
that.
specific, one
But
single
so-
market.
Well,
right?
so
Most of the
yeah,
campaigns
exactly.
we do are
So-
national campaigns.
But that's
with
why
brands.
micro influencers could be
Right.
extremely important for a brand.
Sure.
You know that
Sure.
that has like struggling markets or is looking to you know speak to a specific audience. They really have to get focused. And then to Jonathan's point, you know, I mean, you can then layer on you know the elephants as well, as long as you do have that army of ants that can continue to
Well,
work.
the army of ants can cover Denver. That's for me that works, but the army of ants will not cover the.
But that
US.
can solve real business problems like lifting sales like 5% or 10%
Sure.
in one particular.
Sure, if you're talking about shopper marketing, it's a different scenario.
Well, to Jason, from a brand's perspective, when you think about this question of micro versus macro, or for however you want to define it, how do you, I mean, where do you think about that?
I think it depends on the amount of resources you have available. At Republic, we have a pretty small digital team, and we outsource when we can, but if we can't, and it has to be internal, then we're gonna spend our time on the big guys, because that's what moves the needle for us.
Right.
You know, for the most part, we're using influencers to try to get our artists exposed, and to try to get them heard all across the country and around the world. And the micro influencers definitely can work if you're looking at engagement and the right metrics, I believe. But from our perspective, since this is a small portion of the bigger picture of the business, we have to spend our time effectively. So I think if your resources are limited, you should spend your time on the larger influencers. And then just make sure
Is that a technology challenge more than a,
100%.
you know, so you're seeing kind of traditional programmatic, small publishers hitting the right target audience, lower price, good reach, good effective ROI. So is this a technology problem that the smaller, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at influencers as a commodity, you know, back in the day, if I really wanted to do a deal with someone and my client was set on that person, I was screwed, right? I had to figure out the deal. I had to, you know, then agent at William Morris or CA or ICM, and they'd kick my ass every time, and I have to fight back. Today, you say no, I got 100 yeses lined up, ready to go. That's the power of micro. You know, now again, Kim Kardashian's the world, they're not getting out of bed for less than X anyway, so good luck getting that done. And then to be able to measure, you know, the engagement, like for example, there was an article in Teen Vogue about 6 months ago that proclaimed Selena Gomez the most influential person on social media. It's completely false. She's not the most influential person on social media. She's influential to a specific audience on social media. Because if you look at the data, she's got over 100 million followers. That's unbelievable. I don't even know 1 million people. With that being said, she's getting about 3 million average likes per post. Of those 3 million likes, about 25% of them live in the United States. Of that 25%, about half of them are female. So in reality, Pantene's paying her a lot of money to engage with, on average, about 200,000 to 300,000 women a month in North America. For millions of dollars, I'd rather buy you, you know, 1,000 micro influencers with 100,000 followers and 15,000 average likes per post than a Selena Gomez. But again, you know, you still need the Selena Gomez's of the world for the media value, the exposure, but is that really moving the needle for you? I would probably disagree with that.
I think we need to be careful with statements of, you know, now and then, because I think what happens is there's no right and wrong. The industry is growing, and there's different segments today that are created. As someone who's run her influencer marketing campaign, first one back in 2009, which is very old, but I've seen kind of this industry progressing, and what's happening, you find companies in different niches, and suddenly, you know, just like display advertising is such a complex marketplace today. And this is what's happening to influencer marketing. So you're seeing different companies that have different missions and different philosophies, and there's no right and wrong, and there's no kind of like micro versus macro. I think the debate is kind of, you know, you can debate for hours, but it's really, it depends on the brand. I mean, are you talking about, you know, Fortune 100 company, or are you talking about kind of like a small niche up and coming emerging brand, and what kind of resources they have, and what are their objectives, and I think there's so many different strategies today you can utilize in influencer marketing, and that's the beauty of it. There's so many different platforms that, you know, you can find one that works for you. So there's no reason to kind of like compete and cancel one strategy over another. I mean, for us, and it was, to me, it was clear that at some point, for example, we had to differentiate kind of like which path we're going, because I agree, when you work with micro influencers, it's a totally different technology, there's different strategy, different budgets, different teams that you need to have in place, versus something that is a little more premium and focused on kind of like the top tier talent, suddenly, you know, your teams are looking different, and it's technology, the way you use technology is less of a self-service mode, but more of a maybe combination of technology with supported service, because brands that are spending $1 million on a campaign that maybe engages 10 top tier influencers, they're expected different type of service than something that is more automated, that reaches thousands of micro influencers. So I think it affects kind of like your business model. And today, I think you have to choose as a company. It's really hard to kind of like provide both types of services and build both types of technologies. So I think that's what we see happening today.
So let's talk about the then versus now versus the future. So influencer marketing is obviously hit mainstream. It's getting articles in Teen Vogue, and people are talking about it with the assumption that people understand what it is. It's kind of, so it's
It was on 60 Minutes. That was a great explanation for the older generation.
I thought that piece was horrible, and half of it was complete BS. But that's
but it still put it out there as basically kind of fodder for everybody, right? It's no longer an insider conversation. When we look about kind of the growth that's going on, the growth trajectory, depending on who you want to talk about, we can all throw around our figures, very high. The kind of big brands stepping in and spending big budgets are, you know, really beginning to, not just beginning, but been happening now for a while. Where's this going from a kind of growth perspective? You know, what's been the biggest reasons for the growth to date, and what do you think is kind of going to drive growth over the next couple of years?
Well, I can tell you that our business is driven by the media agencies. That's where we do most of our work. Our business is done off of media IOs, and they are becoming bigger and bigger parts of the media spend, and that's where the money really resides. The creative agencies, the dollars aren't there as much, but at the media level, and this is a media product. Let's not kid ourselves. We are making better ads. We are making better performing ads on mobile devices. At the end of the day, that's what we are doing. And so when you look at it that way and you come to admit that that's what it is, you realize it's a bigger and bigger piece of the media budget. From last year to this year, the scale of our deals has doubled, and now we are approaching seven-figure deals in influencer campaigns as part of a media buy. And so that's the world we're approaching very quickly.
But with those budgets come a lot of scrutiny. I think
Of course, you have to measure everything.
Yeah, you have to
Everything
measure
is
it
measurable.
and start to get to, you know, I think understanding the real tangible business results that are beyond the impressions and engagements, but how are we affecting, you know, real brand health? How are we, you know, changing the perception of a brand? And that comes down to the strategy that you're ultimately going to employ. But then also at the end of the day, our hands are a little tied to what the platforms are going to allow. And I think that that's the major hurdle, and I think that that's what we'll see in the next 18 to 24 months is the platforms really embracing this, like Facebook really embracing this. And you know, putting their foot down a little bit in some places because they realize it's a crazy marketplace, but also I think ultimately providing us with the tools to be able to measure it so that the brands can continue to shift those dollars over to digital, and then this takes a bigger piece of the pie.
Yeah, you hit right on it. Everything has to be measured at this point. We are no longer at the stage where you can say, look, it looked good, right? It did well, and look, you got some comments and you got some shares and likes. Woo! We're way beyond that now.
Can I jump in with a question? Sorry. You just mentioned Facebook really needs to embrace it. What does that mean? Like, is that in terms of measurement, or is there something else?
Yeah, I think so. So I think they're starting to do, and I think we saw it last year, or you know, maybe it's 16 months ago now with the branded content tool on Facebook, and that rolled out. They recently released that to any page, no longer needs to be verified. I think they're in the process of releasing this for Instagram as well. But I think to start to you know, reel in, you know, will there be a set of preferred vendors that they're going to be thinking about, you know, when they really trust how to approach influencer marketing, because ultimately they don't want to devalue the product itself. And I think everyone from consumer to everyone, you know, in the room can recognize those brands that do abuse the space on, you know, the various teas or the tooth whiteners, and I don't want to necessarily like speak about a certain brand, but there are some that, you know, do cheapen the product itself, not only influencer marketing but the platform, and so I think that they need to figure out a way to control that a little bit more.
I mean, let's be realistic, you know, social media changed the game and how you're able to actually measure how effective your marketing is actually performing. You know, you could put an ad in a magazine, you could trust, you know, a ComScore, you could put an ad on TV, you could trust in Nielsen. But today with social media, it's bigger than that. You know, it's not just a billboard on the side of the highway and, you know, the brand tells you, oh, you know, we went up in profit this year. You know, oh yeah, that's because of us, and we were so good.
And that billboard looked good.
And that billboard looked great.
Looked great.
Now it's, you know, how many likes did it get? What was the engagement? Who engaged with it? Did I see someone purchase a product? What's the ROI? Right? The biggest question in marketing. What's the ROI? And now you can actually track to a reasonable extent whether you can assert that what you did actually created an ROI for that brand.
I think brands are going to have to be a lot more tactical as well. Instead of being strategic and having a long-term plan, which they plan, say, now for next Christmas, they have to be tactical because social media allows so many people to see what's happening in the moment that if something becomes hot or someone becomes hot, the brand has to jump on top of that, and suddenly that's a tactical approach, a tactical switch.
On both sides.
On both sides.
Right, it should be negative and positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think from a management perspective, you know, like we're saying, influencers, micro and macro, are disposable, right? Like, I mean, if one says no, you easily can find another one. I think one of the greatest challenges and also opportunities for us that we've noticed is that it's way beyond the numbers. So when we're talking about how, you know, essentially it's a new display ad, we are focusing a lot more on what kind of, you know, how do we add more substance to those influencers? I know that's and I think as
what does that mean, add more substance?
That's, yeah. So I mean, it's like there are groups of influencers who kind of got in there by accident, right? Like they, you know, maybe it's a very pretty young lady, or it's a guy with a lot of abs, or you know, or you know, right, just like that. So and the followers just started coming, but there's no order. You know, there's nothing there. So a lot of times, these are the same people who would accept $50 for a campaign, but then also accept $2,000 for the same campaign, right? So there's also a big conversation of not as much regulation in this space relating to pricing, right? So, but that's a whole other conversation. But I think for us, substance, it's a matter of being able to, you know, for us, the way we charge for our services, it used to be based on a pay-per engagement model, and it's still somewhat like that, but we're going towards more of a value-based model. And that value, we have to be able to prove still based on the engagement, because that's really probably the biggest thing to show that, you know, there is a following and people actually care about the content our creators are posting. But having a lot more focus on making sure that the content that the creators are posting are very specific towards a certain audience, so that when we're presenting that to brands, they can actually see that, okay, there's the agency management behind these influencers, because that's our way of getting out of the commodity space, which is, you know, beyond just what you see as this X amount of followers, X amount of engagement. These are the percentage of the audience that this person reaches. This is X, Y. So those are what we mean by substance. But also, you know, we send press releases on behalf of our influencers and other branding initiatives to, when it comes to deciding between one or the other, ours stand out. So those are the things I mean by, you know, even Mikkel being here, right? Like that's a lot of times you don't have a lot of influencers in a conversation like this, right? But him being here, that's just more value. So and that's kind of what I mean by more substance. And the hope is that this challenges other influencers to also take themselves seriously beyond just, you know, I'm pretty, I get a lot of likes, right? So.
And if I could add in real fast too, I think like you were saying, people fall into it by accident. I think it's happening a bit less in this era because have y'all seen the iPhone 7 camera? Like the quality is ridiculous. Right. So like what would be a wow picture, you know, 5 years back is probably pedestrian and average now. So you got to figure out as an influencer, what else can I add? Like what's my very targeted niche? What's my angle? What's my story? Like how can I actually stand out when everyone has nice pictures, everyone has, you know, a following per se and whatever else. So I think technology has also really kind of pushed it to make it, you know, more important to have a niche, more important to have focus, and to really be intentional with like how you plan this whole thing and not just taking nice pictures per se.
But talking about this intentionality, people were saying before that brands and agencies need to be more strategic in terms of how they think about this. I know you were saying tactical in terms of response, but generally there is this kind of sense of brands need to be more strategic. They need to view this as a legitimate, they already do in most cases, as a legitimate media, or portion of the media spend. Is that, so what you're saying then is that needs to translate now to the other side, right? To the influencers themselves, that they need to take themselves, in some sense, more seriously.
Yeah, you heard him. They said if we can't find one, they say no. Oh, next person. You know,
Well,
we have to be
is that, I
going
mean,
to get the yes. I want the yes.
Right.
And that's where data comes into play, because, you know, if I understand what your audience looks like, I can find 1,000 people just like you of the same audience. You know,
Yeah.
like, I have so many clients that are like, oh, we want a Kim Kardashian. Like, yeah, you have $1 million? No, you don't? Okay, great. Here are a lot of smaller Kim Kardashians with a similar audience you could be working with. So that's really, you know, influencers always say, know your audience, know your audience. Sure, you can know what your audience's consumption is, and that's what pop culture is, right? Feeding consumption. But who are they? You know, are they black? Are they white? Are they Hispanic? How old are they? Where do they live? What are they interested in? You know, if I find out that his audience is predominantly female and they're interested in yoga, he may be a great ambassador for a yoga initiative, but he really likes hip hop. But hey, listen, I know I can move the needle with you because your audience is 25 to 35, lives in New York City, and I can see out the interest, what they're engaged with, interested in yoga. He may not like that because it's not tied to his aesthetic, but if you're looking at yourself as a brand and as a person who's growing your brand, you'll be able to add your own twist to it as to, you know, how you can incorporate yoga into your content. So that's how brands need to start thinking about engaging with influencers and people. It's, you know, the hot girl with 80% male following is great, not for cosmetics. She's great for nutritional supplements. She's great for things that appeal to that opposite audience. So there's a use for everyone.
So,
What I was going to say about the tactical and strategic side of things, if I can steal something from VaynerMedia in particular, is right now I feel like a lot of the influencer marketing campaigns are asked to be DJ'd, right, or remixed versions of the bigger campaigns versus originally composed campaigns for the influencers, right? So what we're doing is there's already a big campaign. Oh, we got a big TV campaign we're doing, a big national campaign. Here it is, and then what can we do with these influencers over here? Versus saying, well, let's have a campaign specifically reaching our audience through these people, and maybe it goes from there back up to TV, right? Right now we're still at that stage of this is the campaign, push it this way, versus let's start with the fans and work our way out, right? Did I get it right?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, good.
No, but I mean that's an internal fight.
Because in Vader, you guys always talk about DJing and songwriting.
But it's also an internal fight that, you know, we're having all the time. Is you know, people we'll add influencers. We'll add influencers, and you know, now as soon as you think that you might ever add influencers, we need to be in that first strategy session,
that's it.
so we can start, you know, saying this is how you build a real like campaign together that's cohesive. Because if not, then we're just an add-on. We're just, you know, amplifying, and then it's not.
Yeah, when it's a bolt-on campaign, it is probably the most painful to get it right and to hit the objectives and to have clear-cut objectives. When it is originating with the talent and the creative going through the talent, then it works best. And I just want to speak to one point again about this idea of working with smaller influencers. Every influencer you work with, you must, absolutely must, be hands-on the production of that content. You cannot just say, here, I don't know, do whatever you want with the phone, make it and upload it, right? No harm. I'm not speaking that he's gonna do a bad job, but you must be on top of that to make sure, how it's posted is compliant, right? How the messaging goes out there is what you want. Every single campaign, we take over our influencers' accounts and we whitelist them and we manage them during the course of the campaign, to ensure that everything is posted the right way. Everything is monitored, everything is measured, every detail. Imagine trying to do that with 50, 75, 100 influencers. Well, impossible to do. You're basically throwing just caution to the wind and saying, here, do something with my product and run with it. It doesn't work.
It's not impossible, but it relies primarily on the proper technology to do that, right?
But you can't. But if they upload it, it's uploaded.
But also,
Right.
if they've got different audiences, if you've got 100 micro-influencers and they've all got different audiences, you've got 1 million here, 2.5 million there, 800,000, etc. But you do want different messages, right? Because what works for Cardi B may not work
Well,
for
of course,
Tara
each
Wallace
influencer should have their own take on it, should bring their own quality to it, but you have to monitor that process.
I think you can put
every
the
step of
controls
the
in
way.
place. I mean, I think that you can still work with hundreds or thousands of influencers on a monthly basis, produce 10,000 pieces of content in months, and still have control, quality control, the way
Not
that
the
you
same way if you do
the way that you
direct,
brief the
yeah.
influencer with very strong one-to-one communication, having that relationship, whether they have 1,000 followers or they have 1,000,000 followers, and taking them through your process and what your expectations are, and then also going through an approval process of deliver a concept to us with your caption, go create that content and send it back to us for approval, and then we monitor it for when it goes up. So I think that there definitely, scale can be achieved. It just takes the right infrastructure. It takes the team. It takes the bodies also to do it.
It takes elbow grease. Let's be realistic here.
It takes elbow grease for 5.
Yeah, right. Well,
10.
But,
It
but,
does.
but is that gonna then challenge growth? Because if you are effectively self-limiting a campaign because you can only effectively manage X number of influencers per campaign, it means you're either going to the Kim Kardashians or
No. I don't think it's going to limit growth. The technologies, the tools that are out there enable you to be able to do it for sure. But that's a different kind of marketer. That's a different type of campaign than one in which you're trying to have major impact, really change sentiment, and be as efficient as possible.
So
Which
is
is a
that,
different-
is that branding versus transactional? Meaning, are you referring to effectively a branding campaign in which I'm trying to change perception versus I'm trying to move sneakers?
No, I would say take Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead. He'll be just as effective in a brand campaign as he would be in a shopper marketing campaign. He would be just as effective in both. So you can be effective in both.
No, but in terms of size.
Yeah, no, he would be on the
He
larger
would be,
side.
okay.
Yeah.
I'll say, from experience, we currently manage 25 influencers exclusively, and those fall within the micro and the macro, right? And we, like you guys were saying, we know that it's possible because that's what we do. We're actually part of the process from content creation to strategy to approval and all that stuff. So we found that, at the end of the day, influencers are regular people, right? Like a lot of us, whether we went to school for this or we've been in the industry for X amount of time, there are jargons that we know. Influencers may not even know what ROI means, right? So they do need that hand holding. So I think for brands who are not working with an agency or anything like that, it is important to be a part of that process. So I do believe, whether it is micro or macro, I 100% believe that it can't be just here's the budget, here's the goal, let me know when it's up, right? Because that's the 100% the quickest way to fail.
To echo that, I think the main challenge in scaling this business is not the technology. You can build today pretty cheaply any tools you want. The challenge is that you're still at the end of the day working with real people. And when you rely on people, there'll always be room for error. They might have misunderstood the creative brief, they forgot, they didn't wake up, so many things happen. I've heard so many different excuses through my years, and it's just like you learn to realize this is part of the business, and this is why those brands pay you money, is to make sure that everything goes smoothly. They don't want to know who didn't wake up or who didn't understand the brief. And at the end of the day, they want their message out there, and they want it a certain way, and they want it at a certain time of the day. And if that doesn't happen, it's kind of like your job to fix. And I found that no matter what tools you build, at the end of the day, you're working with real people. You need to and that's the biggest challenge to scale those campaigns to, hundreds of people, especially people, when you go to a certain level, once you maybe if you work with micro influencers, they're a little more on top of it and engaged because they're so excited to hear from a brand, maybe, for the first time in their life. But once you move to that stage when it's people that get 10 different deal proposals a day, and especially if they don't have a manager who helps them stay on top of it, it's a challenge. And if you try to activate a group of 100 of those people, the challenge becomes 100 times bigger.
So is this basically becoming just another term for celebrity endorsement?
Indirect. It's an indirect endorsement. Advocacy,
Yeah.
back to your original thing, advocacy is a full-on endorsement. This is an indirect endorsement.
Yeah. But it's from a management perspective, it sounds like, you have to have a manager who's working with the individual influencers.
I don't think you have to have it.
to.
It helps if they have the infrastructure, it helps.
That's the problem. Level.
That's the problem with these, programmatic platforms. It's complete BS. It's agencies getting behind a platform. Because at the end of the day, everyone just spoke to the most important aspect of why programmatic is not going to happen in the near future. People, right? Programmatic work with websites because they're not people. My website is not my Instagram account. You know what I mean? So it's a different aspect. As Jade said, The reason why you need managers in this institution right now is also because of education. Influencers aren't educated enough in some cases in how to operate and work with brands. They don't understand the legalities, the process, the terms, etc. Now you do have some people who are very savvy. I mean, there was a recent poll in high schools, what do you want to be when you graduate? I want to be famous. That's what the average high school student wants to be these days. Now that being said, I believe over time, 2, 3, 4 years, you know, as you see colleges creating courses on, you know, even talent procurement, that didn't exist when I was in school. You know, these are things that are happening. The education will get better, these technology platforms will be better suited, but for the time being, it's kind of a Wild West. You know, they all mention the same thing. It's quality control. You know, it's not just finding, you know, even I said, like, you can find 100 people that are similar, but who am I gonna work with that I really believe is gonna do this right, you know? And that's where the human aspect of people, I think, are afraid. You know, like, you can call a manager, you can call an agent. That's how the industry kind of ran for many years, right? But now I'm actually talking to a person that has no middleman whatsoever. Oh my God, what am I gonna do? I don't even know who this person is. So that's a fear, you know what I mean? That's why, you know, I believe MCNs have been very successful early on. I believe that these, you know, collectives or pockets of influencer manager companies are also being very successful because, you know, you're providing that extra cushiony comfort that, hey, listen, we're gonna make sure we handle this appropriately. And that's why, you know, you hear about some of the pitfalls of micro-influencers. It's generally done with a platform where you have to opt into and you're dealing with an influencer in some cases, unless they really have quality control. Because think about it, you know, every kid that's graduating Stanford today wants to create a platform to revolutionize advertising. It's like, okay, get in line. Because there's a lot of people who've been in this business for a long time that actually know how to navigate. And now as an influencer, I wanna get deals from brands. You mean to tell me I have to opt into 18 different platforms just to opportunity to get an offer?
Yeah.
So it's kind of going back to the connectivity of, I wanna know who my guy is. I wanna know when this guy calls me, I know that they're coming with something serious. And I know there's something, you know, plausible behind it, which is why I think the industry is now moving towards more of like the registrar or IMDb aspect of the space, where I can look at tons of different people, understand how to reach them, understand their data, but let me see how, you know, has someone worked with them before? Have they worked with the brand before? Maybe I can see some postings and see how well it engaged before I start talking to them. So that's the kind of paradigm we're in right now, but it will get figured out.
Do you think that as the market grows, so the demand for talent, macro talent grows, so then the cost of that macro talent increases, the brands will be more focused on trying to develop their own influencers. Like the Secchi's, the most interesting man in the world, right? One of the most successful campaigns.
1000%.
If they can put all their money internally, they're going to say, look, why pay Kim Kardashian $5 million when it could be a hit or miss when we can find somebody,
1000%.
elevate them, make them an
Yeah, well,
influencer.
even better, what about, we haven't talked about this yet, what about themed accounts? They're more influential than influencers.
Yeah.
People. I mean, there's a very successful company that came to New York called Social Chain, right? They came out of the UK. Who no one really knows is how they became so successful. They were very smart. They were a bunch of college uni students. They all had themed accounts in the UK, soccer, pop music, this, that, the other. There was a time on Instagram where the algorithm was different. I'm sure everyone remembers the update that happened within the past year, right? So you could essentially have 100 people with, let's say, 1 million followers each, or plus or minus whatever, post statically. So 12 o'clock, 12:01, 12:02, 12, you drive the crap out of a post. Organic uplift, engagement, etc., make things trend. That doesn't exist anymore. But that's primarily due to the fact that you get themed accounts. Why? Because people originally started looking at themed accounts kind of like a magazine. It can be 5 people behind
They're
the
publishers.
account. They're publishers, exactly. So they're very powerful, and almost more powerful in most cases than an actual person influencer. And that's why I think you see a lot of these deals that are happening where, you know, now these accounts are becoming more savvy. I'll post something for an hour. I'll post something for 3 hours. I'll post something for 5 hours, and then I'm removing it. Because I don't want people coming back to my page and consistently seeing advertising. I want them to see the content. Now, it really goes down to the one important metric there is, what's the engagement like? And what time is the engagement highest? Because that's when I want my, you know, my ad to be
So
published.
what's the primary measurement that people are using then? So if I'm the media buying agency, is this engagement, obviously that's a little bit of a slippery term, but let's assume that engagement is a traditional ROI, in which I'm saying I can kind of track how many, who saw it, who clicked on it, how many likes it had, did those people then go on to purchase? What are the metrics that people are looking at?
We're definitely not doing vanity metrics in a lot of these cases, like likes and views and all that. They're bought on either any one of these CPM, CPV, or CPA, cost per action. That's generally what you get, some variation of those. and an affected rate on those.
But I think going, down the funnel or getting more complex, I think the next step is going to be, there's, yes, definitely the vanity metrics, which I think you have to be able to report on. And they have to be true impressions. This can't be, combined followers or anything like that. And the platforms are getting better, and you need to, again, have an infrastructure in place to get those true impressions from the influencer, so you can accurately report. And then the next level is really going to be, what are the brand level studies that I might be able to look at? Are we spending enough in our media mix that we can actually start to see the impact from the influencer? Can we do controls? Can we do pre and post surveys? Can we actually start to understand, is the influencer driving the impact? And then lastly, if they're really sophisticated, they have a strong measurement team, how can we pipe all that data in and start to look at real sales? So can we get direct POS? Can we get depletion reports? That's that next level that you have to be thinking about if you're going to unlock those.
Yeah,
little
absolutely. I'll have to agree. I think like for us, engagement, whether likes.
Did I say CPE? Yeah.
Yeah.
CPE.
So CPE is probably where we fall. That's kind of what we use to and that's what we use to recruit, as well as what we use to pitch our creators, which is this is their engagement rate, et cetera, et cetera. But it's almost not enough, right? I know we recently did a campaign with Mikel, and he sent me a screenshot and said, hey, and somebody said something like, hey, thanks for sharing that post. I just bought X, Y, 3 or something like that of that product. But there's no way we would have been able to track that. That person messaged them, but there are people who probably purchased and didn't make that purchase. And people try discount codes, put your code in the header. But it's this is relatively the concept of influencer marketing has always been around, right? Having somebody who is influential or someone who maybe someone could relate more with say the same message that the brand wouldn't say, right? It's the typical parent wanting their child's best friend to talk to them about whatever, hey, talk to them, versus the parent saying the thing because they're not going to listen to the parent. So the concept has always been around, but making it an actual product in the marketing space is still being figured out. So with that said, I look forward to seeing what innovation that can come relating more so on the software space. I think that's kind of what's really going to solve this way of how do you really track it, because with that, then it may become easier to make better pricing decisions. Because again, it's all over the place right now. We'd have 2 emails come back to back, one with a $10K budget, one with a $100 budget, right? But it's same brief, same ask, same everything. So it's like that.
And can I just ask Paul something? So you said you don't track vanity metrics.
Mm-hmm. We do, but they're
CPM,
they're not part of the KPIs.
So then, if you're focusing on CPM and CPE, then just.
Well, we need them to, but it has to be off of a CPE at the end, right? So we're not just looking at it saying, oh, we hit our target of 1 million likes, great, we're done. It's not. That's not part of the main KPIs. It would be built off of the effective CP, whatever it is.
And then can I just ask for those involved with that? Then how do you weed out fraud?
It's a great question.
We're getting there. Yep.
So, fraud is something you kind of have to look at before you get in bed with someone, right? So again, why you need analytics. If I see that someone has 60% of their audience in the Philippines, I know they have fake followers. If I see someone has 100,000 followers, getting 1,000 average likes per post, I know they have fake followers. So really it's just about using technology to understand whether the person you're looking at is legitimate or not. And second about that is also, looking at their history. Have they worked with a brand before? How well did it perform? What did the engagement look like? Things of that nature. So right now, that's probably the best way to go about it. Leveraging the idea of using data and technology to understand whether or not the audience is legitimate or not. And then obviously, using your best judgment as what do you think they're going to be effective based off of what they've done historically.
I would just say that if the technology that you're concerned about is weeding out people who came from the Philippines, the fraudsters are way ahead of us, right? Meaning, and it's how many likes they got, they're way ahead of us, because it is, whether it's masking an IP address and having people sitting in a bathroom somewhere overseas hitting like or creating a little script, it's happening, and it's happening as the dollars get bigger, as you've seen in kind of the programmatic space. There's more and more fraud because the measurement is becoming harder and harder. And presume that this is something brands are getting concerned about. Are you hearing that? I mean,
Facebook misplaced $1 billion.
oh, for them, that's a rounding
I
error,
mean,
so.
it's $1 billion, $1 billion. Fraud from the, you could say the Mecca, in a sense, you know what I mean? It's concerning.
Yeah, I think it's the platform. I think it you know, it has to come down with, you know, Facebook having, or Twitter having better, you know, just ability to see these accounts and understand that there's almost nothing that we can do to make that better. I think that you're getting that same, you know, bit of fraud if you're running paid ads as well.
Sure.
Because those accounts are active. So I think it does come back to the platform. But I mean, yeah, the tools are extremely sophisticated. We saw a tool recently. I mean, they have those other ones. You log in, you put some verticals and content that you like, and it just goes out and it likes it for you and it comments. And
Yep.
so you're getting comments, and we're noticing a lot of the same uniform comments and a lot of stuff. But they're from middle-sized people with 50,000 followers, 100,000 followers. So they're not these small, you know, bots over or some weird click farm. These are like real influencers that are also doing this because they want to get more exposure, and it gamifies the algorithm. So
I know many people in this room who played in this world in the more traditional kind of web space, in which that's exactly what happens. You know, the companies themselves buy traffic, and basically they don't want to know where it's coming from. It's kind of like, all right, I'll buy the traffic. I'm not going to be so concerned because it performed last month. But the performance metrics are how many likes you got, and basically the fraudster's going to stay ahead.
Really deeper than that. I mean, like what we're doing right now is we're looking at an audience over time before we make a decision. So for example, if I see that 40% of his audience hasn't liked something in the past 30 days, all right, that's a big red flag. If I see that, you know, of the 100 people he has following that, you know, this person over here hasn't engaged in anything over the past 6 months, okay, fraudulent followership as well. So, I mean, it forces us to have to go deeper into the audience. You know, you really have to understand the data behind the person, behind, you know, let's call it the glass of your phone essentially before you make the decision. And that's the honest, truthful answer as to that's where the technology comes into play. You've got to have access to that.
That's the problem.
Sorry.
So that's the problem with having something like Twitter where it's monochrome and you've got no authenticity, no emotion. But what we're doing is we're doing video, and it's, you know, you can actually see the artist, you can see them, you hear them, you can say they like something. Where
And that's why Twitter is declining. So, I mean,
Exactly.
I don't know anyone here that's ran a Twitter campaign in the past 6 to 8 months. The engagement is just declining. And if someone's advocating you run a Twitter campaign, just leave the room, because they really have no idea what they're doing. And if you look at YouTube, even YouTube's engagement is starting to decline as well, thanks to Facebook. So there's always going to be the new guy, and there's always going to be a new way.
That speaks to this question about platforms. So if you basically have YouTube and you have Facebook, Instagram, and you have Snapchat, are they going to control kind of the metrics? Are they going to? They're going to control the economics.
Well, when you talk about Snapchat, there are no metrics. So.
Facebook actually Facebook's lost control in a certain way with Facebook Live, because you've got a lot of all the horrible stuff we see every day going on, the murders, etc. But also, I would imagine, and you can tell me, do you police your influencers and stop them from doing certain things like Facebook Live? Because that's a death knell. If they say something wrong or do something wrong, they're live. You can't take that back.
Right. So I mean, Facebook Live, not specifically, but as a whole, we have like one of our strategists work with our influencers like very close. So their actual brand, what the things they post out there is something we also police. Just because, again, a lot of their profiles a lot of times are that portfolio, right? So we want to make sure that it makes sense. But also, like, you know, there are a lot of companies who want to work with certain people that associate with certain things. So back, I think earlier we were talking about someone's audience and also who their audience is versus what they're interested in. You know, first we make sure to try to pair that together so that it makes sense. And then with that said, there are a lot of things they can and can't do to be able to stay true to that. You know, I think with the conversation of, with fraud, it would be great, you know, because there are a lot of platforms that does this already, where you, as an influencer, you log in and you have access to certain data of your page that you didn't even know that you had access to, right? Because again, influencers are regular people. You know, like, if you're looking for a job, right, the document is a resume. You're trying to work with an agency, the piece is a deck, or right? So it'd be interesting, brand-wise, like, if the industry had a document that influencers, you know, and the closest one is Media Kit, you know, but not everybody, again, influencers are regular people, not everyone has that on hand to be able to provide those things that brands want. So I think it'll be interesting to see more companies looking to work with influencers, micro and macro, to get more hands-on and legitimately even asking them, hey, can you go in, because I mean, they're out there, you know, go to your page, find me your data, go to your Instagram, take a screenshot of this page. I think we would see a lot more successful campaigns if companies went that route versus the distribution route, which is, you know, here's my budget, this is the message that we're getting out, get it out there, you know, no questions
This is
asked.
the demographic I want, just find it.
Right.
To solve that, what we do, we actually request all of our influencers to give their access to their APIs. So this way we can get first party data and we don't have to rely on like third parties, and this allows us to kind of like, besides getting all types of metrics directly from the platforms, also look at things like, you know, their following and the quality. But I think to add to that, there's only so much you can solve with technology, because like you said, technology gets so sophisticated today that, you know, you could buy everything and so cheaply. I think you have to, unfortunately, combine it with some sort of like a human decision process and look at the quality of the conversation. Because like someone was mentioning, there's those groups of influencers today that group together and they just go and they comment, they say, oh, I love it, you look cute. But what does it mean? What does it mean for, is it a meaningful conversation that a brand cares about? How does it contribute to someone's purchase decisions? And I think that's what you have to look at and kind of do really proper due diligence, especially when you spend the kind of fees that a lot of those you know, micro influencers demand.
Yeah, I think we really have to set the premise that a lot of influencers honestly don't know necessarily their growth rate or why they got where they are or why their interaction is so much higher at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't know if a lot of these influencers are necessarily looking at that as much as we are from a brand perspective or a platform perspective. And that's the first and foremost. So it's great to look at, you know, what is the engagement rate in there and everything, but you can go in there and see 400 comments if they're all XD or I like, follow me back, or this is cool. Like, is that real people? Is that real time? So again, I think we have to understand that these individuals aren't necessarily set with the premise to look at these things the way that we are. So again, it's a full circle conversation here. We need the education, we need the monitoring, but at the same time, we need to not lose the authenticity of why we're using them as an influencer.
Totally.
So back to this platform question. So right now, you can count 2, 3, or 4 platforms, kind of major platforms today. What's the risk to the market itself? You know, at some point, you can say Facebook's out of control with Facebook Live, and given what happened on YouTube as well with advertisers pulling out of, you know, with the hate campaigns or the hate speech that was going on. They still control it, right? They have the inventory. What's the risk to the market itself, right? Are they gonna be the ones who effectively become the managers, the agencies, and manage this? You're seeing Google and more traditional advertising campaigns competing with agencies and other partners that they have, basically offering this themselves.
I think it's hard when an agency controls their own inventory. I don't think that's not a marriage that
Inventory
works very
being
well.
the influencer.
Being their platform, right? Google as an agency with inventory, it's not a good, it's never historically worked. It doesn't.
Well, except that Facebook, you know, a lot of publishers are maybe unhappy that they got in bed with Facebook a couple of years ago, but Facebook controls the market right now, right? They drive the traffic, so.
I think it's definitely a possibility. I really do. I think that, you know, if we're talking, you know, 5-10 years down the line, but Facebook right now is, you know, 5 years behind. They have, you know, I think even at Instagram, they have people that lead certain verticals and they do outreach to the community. But I think in terms of really developing like a ton of relationships at scale and really understanding this marketplace, is going to take them a while to catch up. But I think that the near future, I think I mentioned it earlier, is some sort of probably preferred partner where they're probably just going to take a percentage of the deal, or structure something that's like, okay, if you're spending influencers, you're also going to make a minimum buy through our ad product, so they can still find a way to monetize this activity.
Which is what
that's happening.
YouTube basically did, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. In 2015, they created the idea that if you create sponsored content on YouTube, the brand has to roadblock that content with that ad unit that was up to 5 seconds. was very difficult to police. It caused a lot of issues, but it created, hey, you want to do branded content? Great, you do the deal, but you got to buy media against it. That's the way they greenlit it. And eventually Facebook will do something very similar.
You're seeing it now with even, I don't know, I'm sure people can test this on Instagram, there's a new button that pops up that says contact. There it is. You know, now, my hunch is, I think Dante's right, I think it's gonna take some time before Facebook even warms up to the idea of having, let's call it a consolidated front, but then you're talking about all the legal yellow tape that goes around that as well. And on top of that, you know, it's something to be said about owning the inventory and pricing the inventory and selling them. I mean, it's kind of like you're making money on both sides of the candle.
Except it's the easy button. Right? We've seen consistently, as things get more programmatic, the buyers want to go to the easy button. Let's go back to or kind of talk about this FTC and kind of consumer rights and all this, because it's obviously growing, more outcry about this. We here are sophisticated enough for most people around this table to know that when they see a can of Pepsi on a TV screen, that they know that that was paid to play. Not everyone knows that, and in the influencer marketing category, the lines are certainly more blurry in many cases, right? What do people think are the rights here? How do people view this? Because so far the government, well, what do people think?
Well, just to jump in, on a micro level, I have an influencer friend who actually bought the name Jeff on Instagram after he got so much followers or whatnot. And he comes from that Vaughn background, that collective out of Los Angeles. And Jeff uses that hashtag ad when he is doing something that is pay-per-play. And a lot of his followers ask him, what does hashtag AD mean? So is the consumer themselves educated enough to look at something and be like, wow, I'm looking at him.
But is that the consumer's responsibility?
It's not the consumer's responsibility in a way, but is it Jeff's responsibility to educate them that he's getting paid to endorse American Express at Coachella? So that's the real question, is it, who is that on?
And what do you think?
I mean, if I see the word ad, I'm expecting to understand that that is an ad.
Right.
I mean, that's just me.
Now they tell that only sponsored qualifies.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, a lot of it on social media is short form. You know, I come from Wall Street, Goldman Sachs background, and if you talk about a particular company and say, I love this company, it's doing a great job, you have to have a disclaimer at the bottom saying, we have no relationships, or we long this stock, or short this stock, or blah, blah, blah. But you can't imagine doing that on every ad in social media, it's not going to work.
And there's also a little bit of a kind of way to get around showing that this is a pay-to-play, because there is a see more now button.
Yeah.
So
well,
hiding those hashtags.
It has to be above the fold now.
Right.
They just came out the other day, but
Yep.
I mean, I go back and forth. I think we definitely push our clients to obviously disclose on everything. That's what is, you know, kind of in stone right now, and you have to do it. And we've been doing it for years now. You know, always right up front, you know, on the YouTube video in the first 10 seconds, all of those, you know, kind of best practices. But to your point of like product placement, I don't know if everyone understands. I think everyone,
in this room does.
yeah, everyone in the, and I think that you know, right now, because there is such a spotlight on influencers, that's why there's so much scrutiny. I think that a lot of the other industries get away with a lot more than what we do now.
Totally.
And so I think it's actually like, you know, I kind of I'm pissed off sometimes that we have to disclose everything, especially if it is a more of an organic relationship. But because there's a contract in place, but because, you know, we've invited them and we paid for their plane ticket to come over to the UK to watch a soccer match, they have to disclose that. So I think we're doing a lot better job than most other industries or mediums to police ourselves.
I mean, I always say this, like, at the end of the day, numbers don't lie. And we've been tracking paid postings for the past year at Hyper to get a good understanding of whether or not this myth really exists, that if you disclose, you're not going to get the engagement that you think you can get. That's like simply not the case. They actually perform better when you disclose partnership than if you don't disclose. Because of that, let's put it this way, most people on social media are savvy enough to understand in most cases if something feels like it's being paid for. Not maybe our moms or our grandmoms or other people or kids, which is the biggest, you know, issue. But most people get, did they get paid to do that? You know, okay, cool. They perform very well. They actually are, the audience is appreciative that it was disclosed. But then again, it goes right back to we started the conversation with authenticity. Do I really think that this guy is a loyal Amex user? Do I really think this guy really would wear this, that, and the other, or go to this restaurant, or da da da? If it's not the case, then it's not a good fit. I'm not gonna like this. You know, you're just making some money off of me.
But that could also be solved with, like, you know, the frequency and the relationship that you build with someone. So if they are posting,
Sure.
you know, every month for Amex, and you know, you
Build it.
start to see, yeah, you're building,
Build
and then it's okay.
Well, look at them. Probably one of the most successful brand acquisitions in the past few years by L'Oreal. The cosmetics brand. I always butcher the name. NYX. NYX, right? All built on influencers, micro influencers, mid-tier influencers. You know, it's possible. It's just, you know, Dante said you got to build the wave. You got to build
So,
strategy.
We've been talking almost exclusively about B2C, right? That effectively the influencers are using traditional social media platforms to talk about and engage with consumers, or to talk to and engage with consumers. Is there a B2B side to this?
We just did a campaign for an insurance company to doctors, specifically for doctors. So yeah, B2B influence marketing does exist.
Is it, I mean, from my perspective, you think about using doctors as a good example, right? Doctors have acted as paid influencers in this market for years, and the disclosure laws are just beginning to catch up with that side of the market. We all use social media to some degree to promote our own businesses, right? Some more successfully than others. The nice thing about B2B is it tends to be pretty narrow in terms of target, and CPMs and other engagement dollars tend to be very high. Are there tools that are being developed to kind of track that side of the equation?
I think you could use some of the tools that are out there now to do that. You just have to refine who you're talking about. You know, we use a bunch of different data platforms. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of Tubular Labs, so I find their tool really awesome. I'm trying to find people, sorry, I'm on the board. Find their tool great, and I think if you have the right data tool, you know, that's the thing with data right now. We have the most beautiful maps in the world to lay out this whole influencer landscape. What no one has developed from a tool is what I call the ways of this space. That doesn't exist. All the tools are there. So whether you're doing B2B or B2C, great. You got Google Earth down to the satellite level of the tree and the little plant in the park, but no one can tell you how to get from point A to point B with the tool.
Well, you either want to use TurboTax or you're going to H&R Block. You know, there's going to be always the consumption for both. Either I want to, you know, either I want to do it, I know what I'm doing, or I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't even want to deal with this. Let someone else handle it for me.
So we have about 15 minutes left. Amongst the participants and the audience, any specific topics or questions that we haven't covered? Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, well, first of all, just a general comment going back to a conversation 10, 15 minutes ago. You know, talk about the need for being famous. You know, blows my mind. Conversation literally just happened last night. I have two boys, 8 and 9 years old. We're sitting at dinner last night, and he informs me he has no interest in going to college because he wants to be a famous YouTuber.
Excellent.
And this was after the excitement he had because he just reached over 200 followers on his YouTube channel.
He's 8 years old. That's
Yeah, his goal is 1 million. He wants that bronze.
That's what we call a mini influencer.
I think the one thing we miss is around the FTC compliance. Oh, sorry, were you still on?
Yeah. So you know, from there, you know, it just says to me, yeah, this is, you know, just such a wide open industry that's still gonna just blossom and grow. And what we're sitting here talking about today, I mean, if my 8-year-old is talking about being a famous YouTuber, you know, just where it's gonna go is incredible. So I guess that's good for all of us, right? Where it's gonna be. But more specifically, I'm just curious, gonna pinpoint Jonathan, looking at your little bio here. For my own curiosity, you know, some of the clients you're working with, the Hearst and Times of the world, you know, is that more like audience development work that you're doing with them rather than specifically brands? Because we've been talking a lot about brands and work that everybody does with specific brands. I'm assuming though with Hearst and Time, it's more audience development work. So maybe we can touch up, everybody here touch a little bit on that side of the influencer marketing world.
So our relationship with them stems from the fact that, you know, we're very unique in what we offer. Right? We essentially are a big ball of Play-Doh of data that you can leverage in different areas, right? So for mainstream publishers in the formal sense, they utilize this for a variety of reasons. One is, you know, if I'm on a sales team and I'm going in to pitch a brand, I wanna make sure I understand the audience of which I'm gonna be selling this opportunity to, whether or not they coincide. So, you know, they use our platform and our data to understand the audience of the brand before they speak to the brand. You know, no shock to L'Oreal that beauty and fashion are other big areas of interest, but they didn't know that, you know, cooking and marketing were other big areas of influence for them as well. So from a sales team perspective, they can sell better integrated opportunities by understanding the brand's audience. That's the first part. Second part is straight up procurement. You know, a lot of we tend to really do well in a room with people that know how to procure. So for example, you know, Time Inc., they have a consolidated team that does all the procurement on behalf of all of their brands that they're working with. So they utilize our tool to do some discovery, identify influencers in a local level in certain cities for on-the-ground activations, for experiential. And the third part is, just as you mentioned earlier, trying to figure out how to reach new audiences and reach new segmented audiences through the data. So in that case, we're kind of like Home Depot for them. They come to us for all their goods, and they go build their own house. And that's how most of our clients' relationships are in the publisher sectors. But yeah, audience, find that right audience, understand the audience.
Luke, you had a question?
Yeah, one of my clients has done a lot for Save the Children, so I'd be curious about the nonprofit angle. If any of you guys have played in that pool.
Yeah, we're about to do something pretty soon in nonprofit. We've done like one smaller activation before, and I think you still have to do your best job to align the nonprofit with the influencer. I think that you can do a great job if there is, I mean, again, influencers want to receive some sort of value. Whether that is, you know, an experience, whether that is a paycheck, and, you know, even in nonprofits, there's operating costs, and you might have to pay for that marketing dollar. But I think that you can get them at a extremely reduced rate if they align well with the activation. So for something, you know, that's teens drunk driving, it makes sense for, you know, the #1 teen on Musical.ly to be aligning herself with that type of brand, because she's now a role model for this. So it also gives her, you know, she becomes the poster child for, you know, safe driving. There's a ton of value in that.
Yeah, at FELA we have a program called the Allies Program, which is a multi-layer program. It's not just an influencer or an ambassador. These individuals have hidden layers that their own audience may not be able to kind of pinpoint and understand. So we have a boxer by the name of Dusty Hernandez Harrison, who is a ferocious boxer in the ring, but nobody realizes he's a photographer outside. So we kind of develop those type of platforms and understanding for that, but we always encourage there to be some type of, whether it's a nonprofit angle or a charity component into these type of things, because that's also authentic to that influencer themselves. When Dusty wants to build a schoolyard for the school that he went to, or a playground for his neighborhood, or do something with Save the Children, those type of things that may be directly tied back. Again, you just have to peel back the onion and find out what it is that they're interested in a little bit more, just other than being famous or a YouTuber.
Yeah, I think we kind of get boxed into, fitting certain very small areas of importance, whether it's music or culture or fashion or whatever else, but we have so many different things that we do. So just asking the right people and figuring out who else is involved in certain things can be very helpful, and probably make some new connections, and you can find a new part or a new degree of something to add to somebody's brand at the same time too. So
I have a question. How does paid promotion fit in with influencer marketing, or doesn't it?
Extremely well.
Yeah, every one of our campaigns has a paid component to it, a media component to it, where we amplify the posts.
And you're managing that on behalf of the brands?
On behalf of the brand, we whitelist the creators' accounts, and we do it through their accounts. And I would say earned is probably 10 to 55% of the average campaign, and the rest is media.
And so the influencer is almost like the creative, as you was mentioning before, less about distribution, or part of about distribution.
They're in a very, very important part of the distribution, because the campaign first goes out through their channel as a post, and then we amplify those posts that we then do using paid promotion.
And you can, better control the audience. You can, make sure that your target is definitely, getting exposed. You can control that reach and frequency. So all the benefits. But then with that, the stronger equity that the message is coming from an individual and not a brand. And so we've run some testing where we've taken the same exact influencer created content, we whitelisted it, we promoted it from the branded handle. So from this beer brand, and then also from the influencer on behalf of the beer brand, and engagement was 106% stronger on the influencer whitelisted. So it's still an ad. People were okay with it. The sentiment on the post was way stronger. So while it was a -1, it was a 0.5, so above neutral. And then ad recall was also 85% stronger. So even though consumers are still having the same experience in feed, they respond with better.
Yeah, can I ask you real quick?
Yes.
When you see an influencer tweet something out, I know Twitter right now is probably a graveyard as of right now, but when you see them tweet something out and then it's promoted by a brand, and you see that pop up more and more now on Twitter, how do you think that kind of how do you think that reflects with the consumer? Do you think that's better than a beer brand kind of tweeting that out, or?
I do. I think in terms of the response that we're already seeing, and it's still early days. I think whitelisting just came out on Instagram this past fall. I think that it's going to be more and more the future. I think spread your message with the right voices instead of it coming from you. I think that's going to be the smarter way to play.
The only thing is you see it says promoted by Bud
Yeah, you
Light.
still see it very clearly. Like the disclosure's all there, But for some reason, I think people just naturally want to hear a message from a person than from an institution.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, we're gonna just quickly go around the table, and I'm just gonna a quick response to kind of one question, which are predictions going forward. I'm asking this for industry index's self-interest as well as the edification of the audience. We're doing a research project basically on the market, and we're trying to figure out exactly what questions we want to be asking about. So, where do you think the rest of the market's going to be? Where do you think the market's going to be a year from now, and what are the biggest impediments?
I think everyone's saying now that influencer marketing is exploding. I think next year it's going to be cemented flagpole in the moon status, because I think people are going to become extremely educated compared to where we are today on how it actually all works. I think influence is going to replace, as Paul's alluding to, a lot of the media dollars that are being spent programmatically today. I think that's going to be a big shift, and we're already starting to see like the Group M's of the world, how they're trying to reallocate their money towards looking at influencers as direct publishers.
I think the space has grown to the point that it will have to consolidate probably in the next year or so. There's too many platforms, there's too many people doing the same exact thing. I think the barrier to entry is really low. The technology is so cheap these days that everyone can build a platform. And I think one of the challenges are that there are a lot of people that are unprofessional that come to the space or with lack of experience, and that kind of unfortunately creates a lot of the negative reactions that we're seeing in the space. Another challenge we talked about is dealing with people, that it's always gonna impact scale. I think the bigger challenge for the industry is growing to the point that I think it's measured around 3 billion these days. I don't know if that's true, but that's the number that's been thrown out there. I think a lot of people realize there is money in the space, and there's kind of internal fights now who owns that budget. So you're seeing a lot of media agencies fighting with the internal PR firms and the social media agencies and with the brand direct, who's in charge of this significant budgets these days. And I think a lot of brands also building their own practices and maybe looking for people supplement tools, but they're going back to kind of owning those relationships. So I think there's a lot of internal fights going on that eventually, hopefully, are gonna turn to something that will be a little more streamlined for everyone, for all the players in the space, who owns that piece of the budget.
I think that anytime that there's real change like this, there's going to be resistance, and there's going to be kind of the old fighting the new, and that's what I'm seeing at my company right now. Is there's a huge disconnect, and they don't see the power yet. I don't think of influencer marketing and how important influencers can be. I think that the budgets need to increase, but in order for that to happen, there needs to be more excitement and education. And our executives are not excited right now about what we're talking about. They're still concerned with statistics that, in my opinion, are outdated. But until we can figure out the metrics and the measurements of this correctly and kind of steer away from fraud and get them to be not so worried about those kinds of things, it's going to still be an issue. So it's generating that excitement, it's having education, and it's being innovative and creative about our approach.
I think we're going to see a lot more management agencies. You have a lot of marketing agencies, you have a lot of platforms, networks, but I think we're gonna see a lot of more management agencies, more so because we're realizing, and even today's conversation shows us there's a lot more policing that's needed, right? And that policing comes the best from someone who knows the best of both worlds, which is the, working with brand side and executing campaigns to fulfill their objectives, but also being able to have that relationship with the influencer. And I think I'll go even a step further to say more agencies would probably start managing influencers. I know that, like for us, Shade is a subsidiary under our main agency, Boogie. And this was a need, a lot of these influencers came out of, we used them so many times in campaigns, they were almost like properties, right? So we wanted to invest the time in actually building their brands, because future campaigns we do with them will be a lot more successful because we have a lot more control over what goes on. So I predict that there'll be a lot of those, mostly from agencies, also kind of having a piece of their arm managing influencers.
I think, the next year is just gonna be continued growth of micro influencers and kind of what we call that, the micro, anyone under 100,000. I think that, it's really gonna start to achieve scale. I think the budgets are gonna open up to 7 and 8 figures pretty soon. Within the next, 6 to 12 months, I think that it's already there for some of the smart brands. And it's really gonna be driven by working not with, a handful of individuals, but by working with potentially, 5,000 individuals. And in an always-on capacity. I think that you can, subdivide that budget into 1 million different campaigns and initiatives and kind of creative styles. But you need to be working with someone that can be looking at this for you full-time.
I think about 10 years back, everybody wanted to be a rapper, and now we have kids who are 8 years old who want to be, YouTube famous. And I think that as music got more popular, more structure came into place. We have more streaming services, more revenue models, and more regulation. And I think that as influencing grows, we'll see more structure, these problems being solved in certain ways, kind of finding ways around it, and the profit will increase. So of course, they'll find more ways to fix these problems and make things work more systematically for micro-influencers and things like that.
For me, in the next year, it's about measurement, improving the measurements. Everything can and should be measured and will be measured.
Yeah, I think I see tremendous growth within the next year or so. But even further beyond that, I think that there's a lot from a brand perspective, for me, that is going to dictate a lot of the influencer marketing landscape, and that is the retail structure of America that is going to have a heavy influence on influencer marketing, no pun intended. But also just the direction of social media, because social media itself is so changing, and we see platforms that have popped up and been surpassed by platforms that were before them. And I think there's a lot of learning and growth that needs to be done on many different fronts per se, but that's where I see it going. I think that it's still going to be the Wild Wild West for quite some time.
I think influencers are going to get smarter about monetizing their content. Instead of just giving away stuff for free, if you've got 100,000, 200,000 followers, and the only people who are making money are the platforms because they're advertising around your content and they're not paying you. I think the influencers are going to wake up to that, and they're going to retake control of the narrative.
Excellent. So I want to thank you all for attending, participating. Feel free to have a cup of coffee, take a look at anyone that you want, and we will send you an invite for our next roundtable for May.
Thank you, John.